All right, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the economic situation, what's going on in the world. And this is just amazing. It's so surprising. And right now, everybody is very positive about improvement of the economy. In the mind of most people, things can only get better. We're down in the dumps. So people are positive about the future. So stock prices are going up at the moment and things like that. We're at all-time highs again, touching at all-time highs on the S&P 500, the collection of the 500 big American companies. And it's all so disconnected to what's really happening in the economy. So you have stocks which are basically it's basically a representation, a stock price of people's opinions of a company, because of course it doesn't really matter too much what actually happens in the company. A company can be losing money and have their stock price still go up if people believe that it's still worth it for the future value that it's going to have. And so stock prices can go up while companies are losing money. The whole stock market can be going up while everybody in the economy is losing money, because it's all about people's opinions on what's going to happen in the future. It's about people buying something thinking that the price is going to go up in the future. So then it pushes the price up. And because people think the price is going up, the price goes up. And because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what's actually going on under all of this? Well, first of all, so that you understand, I'll have to talk a bit about money creation. Most people think that the way that money is created is that central banks just print it whenever it's needed. They just make new, like people are going on all the time about recently, the Federal Reserve of America is just printing loads of money. Inflation, the money's just going to lose its value. They're printing so much. And the Bank of England's doing the same. The ECB, the European Central Bank is doing the same. And of course, the Bank of Japan that's been their strategy for years and years. This is actually the most interesting thing about the Bank of Japan, is that they haven't really seen inflation, despite the fact that people think that their central bank's been doing that for years. Well, so will we really see that inflation? Will we really see money lose its value? Or cash, dollars lose its value, euros lose their value, and as these banks print loads and loads and loads of currency, therefore, well, spend your money now and quick buy assets, buy gold, buy a house, I don't know, spend your money, enjoy it while you have it before it's not worth anything. Is that good advice? And what is really going on? Okay, here's the thing. The Federal Reserve in America doesn't have the actual right to print money. They can't. How is money actually created then? So, of course, there's a certain amount of goods and services in an economy. Let's think about America right now. So when the goods and services either become more valuable or more goods and services become available, there's this expansion in the economy. There's more goods and services. And of course, if the money supply doesn't increase with that and it falls behind, then the value of that money compared to the goods and services, the value of that money, because there's not enough, it's going to become much higher. And this is actually a big problem. We need to have the money supply keeping up with what's happening in the economy, the growth in the economy, the inflation in the economy. So how is this actually achieved? Central banks don't do this. Where does it come from? It comes from loans. So I don't know if you know this, but when a bank, I'm not talking about central banks either right now, I'm talking about commercial banks, the banks where you have your money in there stored, that the ones that pay you interest. Yeah, it's not very much interest at the moment, but central banks don't actually create most of the money. The commercial banks create pretty much all of the money. How do they do this? They do this through loans. So what happens? Let's imagine you go to your local bank, you want a loan, maybe a business loan, you want a loan, maybe you want to buy a new car, or maybe you just want to have a fun weekend. Who knows? Depends what you can convince them of, really. But this money is pretty much, it's just created on the spot. Yes, they make it. Thin air appears. They press buttons on the computer and it exists. Yes, they are lending out money that they don't have. This is called fractional reserve banking. And this is what all commercial banks do, at least in the Western world. I don't know any further, really, outside of America, the UK, and Europe. I'm not too sure about some other smaller or some other growing economies. But in the Western world, commercial banks create the money on the spot. The moment that you want to borrow money, the bank makes it. This is called fractional reserve banking, which means that the bank only needs to set aside, the bank only needs to reserve part of that money. They only need to actually have part of that. And it changes from time to time, but a norm tends to be around 10%, which means that a bank can actually have $100 and can lend out $90 on top of that, which is expanding that. So let's imagine what happens. Expands this money. Someone comes to the bank. They deposit $100 in their bank. The bank can now take that $100 and can now lend out on top of that an additional 900, including the original. So now the bank can lend out $1,000 and only have 100 actually in its account. And what they do is that money just appears in the other accounts of the other people. And this is an expansion, a tenfold expansion. Yeah. So you're probably hearing this right now and thinking, wow, this is so inflationary. Everything's going to go up. The prices of everything's going to go up. The value of money is just going to go down. But we've had deflation a lot. We've had inflation. And during deflation and inflation throughout over the years, this system's been in place the whole time. Even when there's deflation, it's been in place. Just the fact that the system works this way isn't inherently inflationary. Why? Because right now, banks are just not loaning out money. Not. It dropped to a huge low in March, and banks basically just stopped lending out money. It's been getting worse over the years too, especially since 2008. Something broke in the system, in the economy. And so as long as banks aren't loaning out money, new money is not being created. And there's a massive problem of lack of money in the economy. Yep. This is deflationary, which means that there's not enough money to supply liquidity to all the different people and all the different companies that need it. So what happens when there's not enough money? Well, when something starts crashing, when markets start crashing and things like this, people don't have anything to fall back on, and it just goes down. So It's really important to know this stuff. And I would like to talk more about this, the way that the banking system's actually not working how it's supposed to, all of the signs that you can look, all the charts that you can look at to actually observe this yourself, and what you can do. What I'll say right now, what you can do is you want to prepare not only for an inflationary environment like everybody has been doing since like the 70s. I think it was Warren Buffett saying that he actually thinks most of his success is just about being lucky about the time he was born. Because since the 70s, basically it's been stocks go up. And most investment advice has always been put 90% in stocks for something that's like a risky strategy, and 10% in bonds as a little less risky part of your portfolio. And then sometimes it will be less, like a very common one is the 60-40, 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds. But even that, you see, is 60% stocks. And if I'm as I'm saying, stocks haven't actually always gone up throughout history, just since the 70s, really. So markets are in these cycles, and we've been in this part of the cycle where stocks go up, an inflationary part of the cycle, a growth part of the cycle. We've been in this part for 50 years now, or longer, or plus or minus 10 years. And we've just forgotten what it's actually like. No one who's actually really alive right now properly actually knows what it's like to invest in a deflationary environment. And inevitably, all inflationary parts of the cycle turn into deflationary parts of the cycle, where actually there's big problems with debt. And we know that there are massive problems with debt in the economy, in all economies throughout the world. And these problems, these over-leveraged businesses and all these debt problems, they start to weigh on the economy and mean that there's not actually enough money to go around. And so there's not enough productive money. So inevitably it goes into a deflationary cycle. And there are so many signs that we're going to that right now. And people think that what happened in March to the economy, like the whole crash, was just caused by coronavirus, but it wasn't. It would have happened anyway with another trigger. It's because of this deflationary inevitability when the economy starts going downhill. So most portfolios have been based on just the inflationary part of the cycle, things that perform well in inflation, and just putting some towards bonds, which are quite protective against deflation. But this isn't the best strategy. If you were going to invest for 100 years and not change anything, just leave it there and then just wait and watch it grow, you would want to be protected against the deflationary parts of the cycle too. So what would you do? The most simple way of doing this is you want to allocate 25% to stocks, which are inflationary. You want to allocate 25% to bonds, which behave differently in both inflationary and deflationary cycles, deflationary parts of the cycle. This is why they're so good. Thirdly, you want to put 25% in gold, because it performs very well in inflation. Now, there are questions about whether this can be replaced with silver and whether this can be replaced with now new things like Bitcoin and things like this, but I prefer just the time-tested gold. This performs very well in inflation. And you want to have 25% in cash. And now cash performs very well in deflation too, because the definition of deflation is when actually the economy starts to not be so productive, and therefore the goods and services start to have less value compared to the money. The money starts to expand in its value, rather than the opposite with inflation, where money starts to lose its value. So yeah, that's the most basic recommendation of what everyone should do. The stocks, you should have it in an index, a popular index. It could be the S&P 500. It could be, if you're in England, it could be the FTSE 100. Depends on what you prefer. I prefer to do everything America because it's still the strongest economy in the world, and it will be like that for a while still. But yeah, that's the 25% stocks, stock index, 25% bonds, 25% gold, 25% in cash. The cash part is also protection and like emergency fund. That's the way I see it. Okay, so if you want more information about that, just let me know in the comments. Tell me, make your vote, choose what you like.